In today's programme, volcanic ash blows into European politics. Travel problems prevent 300 of the Parliament's members from attending the session. Business goes on with debates on the response to the air travel crisis and the Commission's legislation programme for 2010. But no votes are being held, as some countries have been hit harder than others. Hello and welcome to this edition of Europol TV News, on the day when members of the Parliament shared the same frustration as millions of other Europeans, many of them unable to make their journey to work. We begin with this report from Arno de Mulder and Joanna Gill on the authorities' response to the crisis and reaction to it.
Flights replace ash in Europe's skies this morning, but the figures paint a stark picture. 6.8 million stranded passengers, 313 airports shut down, costing the flight industry up to €150 million per day. Transport Commissioner Sim Kallas presented the results of the Transport Ministers' meeting to MEPs.
This has started this morning at 8 a.m. through Eurocontrol. 3 types of zones are included in this decision according to their degree of contamination.
Under guidance from Eurocontrol, the Aviation Security Organisation for Europe, airports began to send the first flights in 5 days. Some airlines questioned whether a flight ban had been too cautious. This MEP put safety before profits.
We're criticising precaution when people's lives are really on the line. So we were right and Eurocontrol was right. But it's a shame that the EU doesn't have power over this domain.
During a plenary debate, MEPs looked to the future with a return to the past. The Single European Sky project is decades old. It seeks to harmonise regulation and management of European airspace.
We've been speaking about a single European sky for 20 years. Of course that couldn't have prevented the volcano from erupting, but it would have made it possible to prepare better.
In the interim period, the already crisis-stricken airlines are looking to the EU for aid. MEPs put passengers first, proposing money go towards better communication and coordination.
More assistance, more opportunities, not closing up, that's what we really need, and then we can look at what other assistance there is necessary for the travel companies if that becomes necessary. But right now we've got to get people moving.
Tuesday's decision to open up the skies will alleviate the stress on customers and companies alike. But the debate today showed that agreement on long-term solutions is still up in the air.
Today's guest is Peter van Dalen, a Dutch member of the Conservatives and Reformists who sits on the Transport Committee. Earlier this afternoon, I asked him whether he felt that the European air safety authorities had handled the whole volcanic ash affair well up to now.
No, not enough. You see, there was a lack of coordination between the member states on the closing of our airspace, and the passengers were not good informed. They had to wait for a long time to have any information, so that should be improved.
Some states were looking at the same data and coming to different conclusions.
Well, that's not the case. You see, there is one advisory body in Europe, that's Eurocontrol, and Eurocontrol advises the member states what to do. But they did one thing wrong. They were too rigid in their approach. They advised to close the whole airspace above Europe, and that was a measure too rigid and not necessary.
What worries many businessmen is that Europe could be closed for the foreseeable future.
Well, we have to change that, and that's why there is now a working party led by Mr. Kallas, and you have to make a risk analysis. You have to compare satellite pictures and results of test flights, and when you have that information, you can say we close a certain part and another part of the airspace we leave open for certain corridors or under certain conditions, such as daylight. So we have to change the system.
Let's bring this closer to home. What's the knock-on effect likely to be, do you think, on Parliament's legislative programme?
Well, that's not that big. You see, we should have had votes this week in Parliament, and that is postponed now for 2 weeks, and that's the most difficult thing we face now, that the voting is postponed.
But 300 members aren't here. It's surprising that doesn't have an effect.
Well, I hope it has one effect, that we stop gathering here in Strasbourg and we stay in Brussels all the time.
Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
So, once the dust has settled, what sort of compensation will we be entitled to? Regular travellers will often have seen the posters at European airports advising on passenger rights. But disruption on a scale such as this has surely never been envisaged. Here's Margarita Sforza on a rapidly evolving picture.
Little by little, Charles de Gaulle Airport resumed limited activity early this morning after 5 days of empty skies. This American tourist drove from Gothenburg in Sweden all the way to Paris.
Unfortunately, the airplane got closed as soon as I arrived here. Then I had to wait, and I was supposed to go to Toulouse last night by bus. Then they cancelled that flight also. So finally, thanks God, I got the ticket back to LA.
Not all passengers have been so lucky. Some European airports remained closed, like here in London. British Airways cancelled all its flights due to new fears over the intensity of the ash cloud coming from Iceland. Grounded passengers can wait and exercise their rights to information and refreshment, and of course the right to an alternative journey.
First of all, the passengers wanted to go home as quickly as possible. Therefore we have to need the other modes of transport, that is inland waterways, sea waterways. We need road and rail. And if it is not possible, of course there must be an reimbursement for them.
Airlines have a legal responsibility to propose a travel solution. Penalised by this crisis, they have already asked for financial compensation. However, some MEPs want the allocation of public funds to be based on how well airlines compensate the travelling public.
Now the rest of the news, starting with the Commission's programme for 2010.
Setting priorities. European Commission President José Manuel Barroso came to defend his action plan for 2010 before MEPs. He spoke of an exit to the crisis, setting up sustainable growth and economic surveillance. Political groups made their views known. The priority are the programs creating employment for one of them, whereas others want to also focus on combating poverty and consolidating countries' budgets. Some found Barroso's program too timid, considering the situation the EU is facing. They are asking to have more economic coordination and the creation of a European Monetary Fund. Points of view. The usual question-answer between MEPs and the Commission President was, among other things, centred on employment and aid mechanisms for Eurozone countries experiencing difficulties. José Manuel Barroso defended the system put into motion to help Athens before occasionally critical MEPs. He hinted that the Commission would present proposals for strengthened governance of the euro in the near future.
With 408 members present, Parliament was clearly quorate today. But with the uneven distribution of absentees, those from the north and from islands were worst hit, it was felt unfair to hold any votes. So, how will all this affect the parliamentary and legislation diaries going forward from here? A report compiled by Jakub Ivanuk.
A volcanic eruption in Iceland and a train strike in France, resulting in a plenary session in ruins. A number of Greek and Irish MEPs weren't able to make it all the way to Strasbourg.
What we can say is that it's not erupting here. It's quite calm, really. I think it's the first time that's happened, and it certainly creates a very strange atmosphere.
Most of the important debates, such as that on the budgetary discharge, will take place, but the votes will not.
We could have voted. However, for political reasons, we would like all MEPs to participate in the vote. Because even if we reach a quorum, some nationalities are overrepresented.
All the other texts will be adopted during the next mini-session in Brussels on May 5th and 6th. 2 days that already look very packed. That is, if MEPs manage to organise themselves to be present for the votes. Uncertainty rules the day.
We don't know what will happen, but we have to keep our hopes up.
And what if the volcanic eruption in Iceland continues?
That's also a way out to see if we will have a good network of public transportation within Europe, besides the plans that could work a little bit better.
More on all those stories here on europoltv.eu. Thanks for watching and bye for now.